I am Bennie, 67 years old. 1 month after Eleanor, my wife of 45 years, passed. Suddenly, I sat in the hollow quiet of the kitchen in the house we built together. The smell of coffee no longer held joy. My son Julian had just walked in with a cool expression. Instead of a consoling hug, he placed a thick envelope on the table. "You need to sign these," he said. His voice was not that of a boy. It was the voice of a stranger delivering an ultimatum. Before we open that envelope together, I am genuinely curious where you are listening to this story from. A quiet small town somewhere, or amidst the relentless rhythm of a big city. Let me know in the comments below. And if you would like to walk with me through more honest life stories like this one, please take a moment to subscribe. It truly makes a meaningful difference. For 45 years, my life was built on a foundation of 2 simple sounds. The first was the soft, deliberate scratch of Eleanor's fountain pen as she reviewed contracts late into the night at her desk. The second was the distant, comforting murmur of my own classroom, filled with teenagers debating the causes of the Civil War. We were a pair, Eleanor and I. She was the steel sharp and unwavering, a real estate attorney who could navigate a multi-million-dollar deal before breakfast. I was the oak, steady and patient, a high school history teacher who found more reward in a student's sudden moment of understanding than in any paycheck. Our love was not a loud thing. It was in the ritual. Every single morning I would wake first and grind the beans for the French press. She would descend her briefcase already in hand and accept the steaming mug with a smile that reached her tired eyes. That was our conversation. That was our "I love you." And when her work took her to other cities for depositions or closings, we wrote letters. Real letters on paper. I kept every single one she sent me in a cedar box I made for our 10th anniversary. Her handwriting was all decisive angles and sharp loops, but the words were pure warmth. "The bed is too big without you," she'd write. Or, "I argued a zoning variance today, and all I could think about was your ridiculous impression of the city planner." I still have that box. It sits on my dresser, a vault of our quiet, profound us. Julian. Our son was born into that world of contrast. He was a bright kid, inquisitive, but with a lens on life that always seemed to magnify what was missing. He adored his mother, worshipped her efficiency and the tangible results of her work. The cars, the vacations, the undeniable security. My world of books and essays and patient guidance seemed abstract to him, less real. I remember him maybe 12 years old, looking at my paycheck stub on the kitchen table. "Mom makes more than that in a day," he'd said, not maliciously, but with a blunt observational fact that cut right to the bone. Eleanor was always the bridge. She'd pull him close and say, "Your father builds minds, Julian. He builds citizens. That is a different kind of wealth, and it lasts much longer than any dollar." She tried so hard to plant that seed. She made him help me grade papers, sometimes explaining that understanding history was understanding human nature, the most valuable skill in any business. He would humor her, but his eyes would drift to the window, already calculating something else. Her death was a bolt from a clear blue sky. A cerebral aneurysm, the doctors called it. 1 minute she was telling me about a property title dispute that was more fascinating than any soap opera, and the next she was gone. The world didn't just go quiet. It became a vacuum, sucking all the sound, all the color, all the purpose out of everything. I moved through the funeral arrangements like a ghost. Julian handled things then, or so it seemed. He made the calls to the funeral home, picked the music. I was grateful in a numb sort of way. I just clung to that cedar box. In the hazy days after the service, he started asking questions. Not, "How are you holding up, Dad?" but practical pointed ones. "Who is Mom's executor? What firm is handling the estate? Have you seen the full portfolio?" My mind was a swamp of grief. I could barely remember to eat. "Patrick is handling it," I'd mumble, referring to Patrick O'Malley, Eleanor's law partner and our friend for 40 years. "Patrick will know." I'd see a flicker in Julian's eyes, then a tightening around his mouth that wasn't quite grief. It looked like impatience. The call from Patrick came on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was coming through the kitchen window in a way that felt personally insulting. "Bennie." Patrick's voice was gravelly and kind. "I need to go over Eleanor's estate with you. It's time." He came to the house, sat at our kitchen table with a simple leather folder. No fanfare. He laid it out in his calm, methodical way. The total value of Eleanor's estate after all taxes and liabilities was $48 million, a mix of commercial properties, stock holdings, cash accounts, and of course this house. It was all meticulously organized. "It's all yours, Bennie," Patrick said, placing a hand over mine on the table. "Every last cent." She set it up in a survivor's trust. "You are the sole trustee and beneficiary. You have full control." I didn't feel rich. I felt buried. The weight of that number, 48 million, was like a physical thing pressing on my chest. It wasn't a gift. It was a colossal responsibility created by the woman I loved, and I had to face it alone. I hadn't told Julian the details yet. I didn't have the words. I just sat there after Patrick left, staring at the hummingbird feeder outside the window, wondering how the world could just keep spinning. The envelope Julian placed on the table that next morning was a pale institutional grey. It looked out of place against the warm grain of the oak table we'd bought at a flea market 30 years ago. He didn't sit. He stood over me, a tall man in an expensive sweater, his posture all business. "You need to sign these, Dad," he repeated, his voice adopting a tone I'd heard him use on conference calls. It was a tone meant to project calm authority. "I've been looking into things. This estate, it's a lot for anyone to handle, especially now." I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, the paper crisp and cold. Words jumped out at me. Irrevocable trust, grantor, successor trustee. It was a legal labyrinth. "What is all this, Julian?" "It's for your protection," he said, pulling out a chair finally and sitting across from me. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his hands clasped, the posture of a confidant. "Listen, at your age, and with what you've just been through, managing an asset portfolio of this size it's a full-time job. It's stressful. You're vulnerable. People could take advantage." He said people with a slight emphasis, as if they were circling the house already. "This," he gestured to the papers, "sets up a protective trust. I'll be the trustee. I'll manage everything, make the investments, pay the bills. You'll get a generous monthly allowance, more than enough to live comfortably without a single worry. It's what Mom would have wanted. She'd want you to be safe and cared for." A cold trickle like the first drop of ice water traced down my spine. This wasn't concern. This was a takeover. "Who drafted these?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "I consulted with a top estate attorney," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "A friend of mine. It's all standard above board. The best thing for you." "Have you spoken with Patrick O'Malley?" A shadow passed over his face. O'Malley was Mom's attorney. His loyalties are historical. This is a fresh look, a modern solution. He pushed a pen across the table toward me. Just sign on the highlighted lines. I'll take care of the rest. You can just grieve. Be at peace. I looked from his eager, tense face to the documents. On the signature line for grantor, my name was already typed Bennie Arthur Walsh. They had even prepared a signature block for a notary. They were so sure. This was a transaction, not a conversation. The memory of Eleanor's letter floated back. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. I'm not signing anything, Julian. I said it quietly, pushing the papers back toward the center of the table. Not until I understand it fully. Not until I talk to Patrick. The friendly mask slipped. His jaw tightened. There's nothing to understand. It's protection. Mom would not have wanted you to be burdened with this. She trusted me in business. She knew I could handle complex assets. There it was, the unspoken comparison that had lived in our house for decades. The doer versus the dreamer. The producer versus the teacher. The air grew thick. Your mother, I said, choosing my words with the care of a man defusing a bomb, trusted me with her entire life. She left these things in my care, not yours. It was as if I'd slapped him. His face flushed. What did you ever contribute to this estate, Dad? The word was in air quotes, venomous. Your teacher's salary, your pension, this house, this life, all of it. That was Mum. Every bit of it. And now you're going to sit on it. Let it stagnate. You have no idea what to do with it. The words landed each one a precise, practiced blow. They found the old tender bruise of insecurity I'd carried and nourished for years. He had given voice to the shadow I'd tried to ignore. I felt my hands begin to shake under the table. Not from anger, but from a devastating sense of recognition. My own son saw me as a custodian of my wife's achievements, not a partner in them. A burden to be managed, not a father to be respected. Get out, Julian! The words came out hoarse. He stared at me for a long moment, a mix of disbelief and fury in his eyes. Then he stood the chair legs, scraping harshly against the floor. Fine. Think about it. But this isn't emotional, Dad. This is practical, and practicality always wins. He turned and walked out, leaving the grey envelope and its cold contents on the table. I sat there for an hour, maybe 2. The light in the kitchen shifted. Finally, I picked up the document. I flipped to the last page. There, next to the notary block, was a copy of a durable power of attorney form I had signed years ago, naming Julian as my agent, in case of emergency. He had attached it as an exhibit, a supporting document. He wasn't just asking for control of the future. He was showing me he believed he already had a claim on my present. The chill in my spine spread, settling into a deep, permanent cold in the pit of my stomach. The silence after Julian left was a lie. It was broken within hours by the ringing of my phone. His calls came in waves. First, the conciliatory tone. Dad, let's talk. I came on too strong. I'm just worried. Then the impatient. You're being stubborn. This is for your own good. Finally, the veiled threat. If you don't get proper structure in place, the IRS will be all over this. You could lose half of it to taxes and penalties. You'll create a legal mess for everyone. I stopped answering. He began showing up unannounced once, with a slick, smiling man in a too-perfect suit he introduced as his financial strategist. I refused to let them in, speaking through the locked screen door. This is inappropriate, Julian. Leave. The true escalation came on a Thursday morning. I had taken to walking a slow, aimless loop around the neighborhood, trying to outpace the grief and the anxiety. The air was crisp, the kind of morning Eleanor loved. When I rounded the corner back to my house, I stopped. A small cardboard box sat on the front porch. On top of it were a few framed photos, my parents on their wedding day. A picture of Julian and his sister Lisa as children at the beach, and the cedar box of letters. Next to them, a few of my sweaters were folded haphazardly. My heart began a slow, hard pounding in my ears. I walked up the steps, my legs feeling foreign. I tried the front door. It was locked. The key from my keyring didn't fit. The lock had been changed. I saw his car, then parked halfway down the block. He was sitting in the driver's seat, watching. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and called him. He answered on the first ring. "Julian, what have you done?" His voice was calm, detached, the voice of a customer service agent explaining policy. "The house is the single most valuable liquid asset in the estate, Dad. I have a fiduciary responsibility to secure it. Given your current emotional state, leaving you there alone is a liability. You need to be somewhere. Supervised. Get a hotel room. We can discuss next steps when you're thinking more clearly." Fiduciary responsibility. The words felt like ash in my mouth. You have no responsibility here. This is my house. You changed my locks. It's not your house until the estate is fully probated, he said, and I could hear the rehearsed legal phrasing. And as your power of attorney acting in your best interest to protect the asset pool, I have taken reasonable steps to secure it. Now please don't make a scene. The neighbors are watching. I looked across the street. Old Mr. Miller was indeed standing in his doorway, a look of profound concern on his face. A hot wave of shame washed over me, followed by a rage so pure it blurred my vision. I was being evicted from my own life by my own son, and he was worried about a scene. I ended the call. I stood there on my porch, a supplicant, before my own door, holding a box of my own scattered life. Mr. Miller began to walk slowly across his lawn. I couldn't face him. I picked up the box, the cedar box, clutched to my chest, and I walked down the steps away from my home toward his. He didn't ask questions. He just opened his door wider and said, "Come in, Bennie. I've just put the kettle on." In his small, tidy living room that smelled of lemon polish and pipe tobacco, I fell apart. I called my daughter Lisa on the other side of the country. I tried to explain, but it came out in choked, incoherent sobs. "He locked me out, Lisa. He took the house. He says he has the right." Her fury was instant, a crackling fire over the line. "I'm getting on a plane, right now. That greedy, soulless—" "Dad, do not sign a thing." "Do you hear me? Don't come," I managed to say. "Not yet. It's not safe." I didn't know what I meant by that. I just knew I couldn't have my daughter walk into this battlefield. After I hung up, I sat on Mr. Miller's floral sofa, the cardboard box at my feet. I lifted the lid of the cedar box. The scent of the wood and old paper, the scent of Eleanor enveloped me. My fingers found a letter at random. It was from 15 years ago when she was in Chicago for a week. Her writing filled the page. "Bennie, my love, it's midnight here, and the city is all lights below my window. I just closed a deal that would make most people giddy. But all I feel is tired. All I want is to be in our kitchen with you making that terrible pun about the zoning board. The world out here is all sharp edges and louder voices. They think power is in the contract, in the closing price. But I know the truth. The real unshakable power is in a quiet heart. It's in the home you've built, not just with boards and nails, but with kindness and constancy. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. It's your fortress. It's ours. I'll be home soon. All my love, Elle." I read it once, then again. The tears came then, not just of loss, but of a shocking, clarifying realization. She knew. Somehow she knew a day like this might come. She was speaking to me from the past, handing me a weapon I didn't know I possessed the absolute certainty of her trust. My grief didn't vanish, but it hardened into something else. A resolve. This was no longer about money or property. Julian had violated the one thing Eleanor said was unshakable. He had tried to take the fortress. With a steady hand I hadn't felt in months, I reached into my wallet. Behind my driver's license was a worn, cream-colored business card, Patrick O'Malley Scrull, O'Malley and Associates. And below the office number, written in Eleanor's sharp hand, was his personal cell phone. I dialed. It rang twice. Patrick O'Malley. The voice was like gravel and granite. Patrick, it's Bennie. My voice was clear. I need your help. Julian has changed the locks on my house. He's trying to force me to sign over control of everything. There was a beat of silence, then a low, furious sound. Where are you right now, Bennie? Give me the address. Don't talk to him. Don't sign a single goddamn thing. I'm on my way. Patrick O'Malley arrived at Mr. Miller's house, looking like an avenging angel in a rumpled trench coat. He carried a battered leather satchel that was older than Julian. He listened to me, his pale blue eyes turning to chips of ice as I showed him the grey envelope documents and recounted the lock change. Okay, he said, his voice dangerously calm. First, we get you back into your home, legally and immediately. Second, we dismantle this absurdity piece by piece. He opened his satchel on Mr. Miller's coffee table and pulled out a thinner, neater set of folders. Bennie Eleanor was my best friend and the sharpest legal mind I've ever known. She didn't just make a will, she built a fortress. And you are the sole occupant. Let me show you the blueprints. He laid out the documents, his thick finger pointing to clauses and titles. The house, it was held in joint tenancy with right of survivorship. The moment Eleanor passed, title vested 100% in you, Bennie, automatically. No probate needed. It is your separate property, free and clear. Julian changing those locks was not a protective measure. It was an illegal act. It's trespassing. It's possibly unlawful eviction. The words were a balm, a key turning in a long locked door inside me. Now the estate, he continued, the 48 million. It is not in a standard will waiting for probate. Eleanor placed every liquid asset, every investment, every property into a revocable living trust years ago. You and she were co-trustees. Upon her death, you become the sole trustee and the sole beneficiary. You have absolute unilateral control over every dollar, every stock, every brick. There is no successor trustee named unless you appoint one. Julian's name appears in only one place. He flipped to a single-page addendum. Eleanor left him a specific, separate bequest, $100,000, to be paid directly with no strings attached. Then Patrick pointed to a handwritten note attached in Eleanor's script, which was also notarized. It read, "This bequest to Julian is made with love in the hope he finds his own path. It is conditional upon his non-interference with Bennie's administration of the main trust. Any legal challenge by Julian regarding the estate shall void this bequest." She had seen around corners I didn't know existed. She had loved our son, but she had protected me from him. The pain of that knowledge was immense, but so was the strength it gave me. She had believed in my ability to handle this. She had trusted me. The power of attorney. I said, my voice hollow. Patrick scowled. The durable power of attorney you signed years ago names Julian as your agent if you become incapacitated. Are you incapacitated, Bennie? No. Did you sign a letter or declaration stating you were incapacitated? No. Then it is dormant. It grants him no authority. And as of right now, Patrick said, pulling a fresh legal pad from his bag, we are going to revoke it. We will execute a new one, naming someone else. Me if you wish, or Lisa or both. We will also file an immediate cease and desist order against Julian, demanding he return all keys. Cease all contact regarding the estate and stay away from the property. And we will notify the police of the illegal lockout so they have a record if he tries anything else. He looked at me, his gaze softening from steel to something like pride. Eleanor knew you had a gentle heart, Bennie. But she also knew that gentle doesn't mean weak. She built this structure so you would have the ground to stand on when you needed to be strong. The question is, what do you want to do now? I looked at the documents. I looked at the picture of Eleanor on Mr. Miller's mantel, which he had brought over from my box. I felt the ghost of her hand on my shoulder. The sorrow was still there, a vast ocean of it. But on its surface now was a steady, determined vessel. I want to go home, Patrick, I said. And I want him to understand he can never do this to me or to her memory again. Good, Patrick said, a grim smile touching his lips. Then we go beyond legal. We make it physically clear. We retake the territory. We devised a plan not of drama, but of decisive, quiet action. Patrick would draft the cease and desist and the revocation documents immediately. I would sign them. He would have a process server deliver them to Julian first thing in the morning. Concurrently, I would hire a reputable, high-end security company. They would meet us at the house in the morning to change all the locks again, install a temporary alarm system, and provide a security presence. Finally, and this was my idea, I would hire a top-rated biohazard and deep cleaning service. Not because the house was dirty, but because I needed it to be cleansed. I needed every molecule of his violation, his entitlement, scrubbed from the air. Patrick nodded slowly. A physical and symbolic reclamation. Eleanor would approve. He started writing. You'll need to call the security firm now. I'll handle the law. Tomorrow we take back what's yours. I signed the papers he placed in front of me, my hand steady. The signature looked like mine, but it felt like it belonged to a different man. A man who was no longer just Bennie the teacher, the widower, the grieving husband. He was Bennie the trustee, the homeowner, the man his wife had entrusted with a fortress. It was time to act like one. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Patrick picked me up from Mr. Miller's in his sensible sedan. A sleek black SUV was already idling at the curb in front of my house. Two men in dark uniforms with the discreet logo of the security firm stood beside it. Another van from a locksmith company was parked behind it. And Julian's car was there. He was leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed, a picture of aggrieved authority. He pushed off as we pulled up, his face a storm cloud. He ignored Patrick and the security team, striding directly toward me as I got out of the car. What is this dada show of force? Who are these people? His voice was loud, meant to intimidate. I didn't answer him. I simply reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out the crisp white envelope Patrick had given me. I held it out to him. What's this? He snapped, snatching it. The first is a formal revocation of all powers of attorney. You hold in my name, I said, my voice level. The voice I used to explain a complex historical event to a confused student. The second is a cease and desist order. You are to return all keys to my property immediately. You are to cease all contact with me regarding my financial or legal affairs. You are to stay off this property. Any further contact will be considered harassment and will result in a restraining order. He ripped open the envelope, his eyes scanning the documents. His face, flushed with anger, began to drain of color. You can't. I have a responsibility. This is for your own good. You're not in your right mind." It was then that the two large white panel vans turned the corner and rumbled slowly up the street. In bold professional lettering on their sides, they read, "Advanced Restoration and Decontamination Services." They pulled in behind the locksmith van, their sheer size and stark purpose undeniable. Julian's head snapped up from the papers. He stared at the vans, then back at me, confusion battling with his fury. "What are those? Who are they?" The side doors of the vans slid open. Teams of men and women in crisp white coveralls, gloves and booties emerged. They began unloading industrial-grade equipment, powerful-looking air scrubbers, sprayers, rolling carts of supplies. "They are here," I said, meeting his gaze fully for the first time since this began, "to reclaim my home, and to erase every trace of your betrayal from it." The words landed with a physical weight. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The performance, the bluster, the illusion of control. It all crumbled in the face of this quiet, massive logistical response. He wasn't dealing with an emotional, fragile old man. He was dealing with a client who had hired a professional team to solve a problem. And he was the problem. One of the security officers, a large, calm man, stepped forward. "Sir," he said to Julian, his tone polite but impregnable, "you need to leave the premises immediately. You are currently trespassing on private property." Julian looked from the officer to me to Patrick, who stood silently observing to the cleaning crews beginning to organize their equipment. The reality of his situation, the complete and total legal and tactical failure of his gambit, settled over him. The color was gone from his face, entirely replaced by a sickly pallor. The righteous son had become the interloper. The protector had been exposed as the thief. He stumbled back a step, clutching the legal papers to his chest like a shield. He tried to muster one last glare, but it was hollow, defeated. Without another word, he turned, fumbled with his car door, got in, and drove away. He did not look back. I watched his car disappear around the corner. There was no triumph in my heart, only a vast, weary sadness, and beneath it, the solid, unyielding bedrock of what was right. Patrick placed a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Bennie," he said gently. "Let's go unlock your door." The locksmith worked quickly. With a solid clunk, the new deadbolt slid home. I turned the handle and pushed open the door to my house. It smelled the same, like Eleanor's lemon verbena candle and old books, but it felt different. It felt like a crime scene I was taking back. I stepped across the threshold, followed by Patrick. The crew chief from the cleaning service approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir, we'll start on the main living areas and work our way through. We'll treat the entire interior air. It'll be like a brand new space by this evening." I nodded. "Thank you. Please, be thorough." As the hum of their machines began to fill the air, a sound not of violation, but of purification. I walked to the center of the living room. The silence here was no longer hollow. It was mine. It was waiting to be filled again on my terms. The fortress, as Eleanor called it, was secured. In the days that followed, a different kind of quiet settled in. It was the quiet of paperwork, of decisions, of re-establishing order. Patrick's office became my temporary command center. We formally filed the revocation and the cease and desist. We notified the local police precinct of the previous illegal lockout, providing them with the case number for future reference. It wasn't about pressing charges. It was about creating an official record, a paper trail that spelled out the truth. The most profound piece of business was Julian's $100,000 bequest. Patrick was clear. Legally, you could withhold it based on his interference. The condition Eleanor wrote is ironclad. I thought about it for a long time, looking out Patrick's window at the city Eleanor had helped shape. No, I said finally. She left it to him out of love, hoping it would help him. Withholding it would make this about punishment. That's not what she wanted, and it's not who I want to be. Send it to him, but with the full documentation of the condition attached, and require a signed acknowledgement and release stating he waives any and all future claims against the trust or me. Patrick nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. That's wise, Bennie. It severs the tie cleanly on your terms. The call came a week later. Julian's voice was stripped of its usual confidence, replaced by a hollow, transactional tone. I received the documents and the funds. My attorney says the release is standard. I'll sign it. There was a long pause. I didn't fill it. Let him sit in the silence he had created. Dad, he started, and I could hear the wheels turning the search for an angle, a wedge. This has been a misunderstanding, a stressful time for everyone. Maybe we could. Goodbye, Julian. I said, my voice calm and final. Take care of yourself. I ended the call. It was the last time we spoke. The pain of that severance was a deep, permanent scar, but it was a clean wound. It wouldn't fester. My daughter Lisa came to stay with me for a month. Her presence was a healing balm. We didn't talk about Julian much. We talked about Eleanor. We cooked meals in the reclaimed kitchen, the smell of garlic and laughter slowly pushing out the sterile scent of the cleaning agents. We went through photo albums, and I told her stories she'd never heard about the young woman her mother was, about the dreams we'd woven together before there was any money. With Patrick's guidance, I began to learn the architecture of the trust. I hired a conservative ethical financial manager he recommended. We met for hours, and I asked the same patient questions I'd once asked of historical texts. I was not a quick study, but I was a diligent one. This was Eleanor's life's work, and I would be its steward, not its prisoner. I sold a few of the smaller commercial properties that required hands-on management I wasn't interested in. The proceeds were reinvested, but the bulk of it I left as it was a well-oiled machine my wife had built. My role was not to be a tycoon, but a caretaker. My needs were simple. The trust's income provided more than enough. One afternoon, I was having coffee with Mr. Miller on his porch. He gestured to the empty lot next to his house, a sunny quarter-acre patch gone to weeds. Developer's been sniffing around, wants to put up one of those tall, skinny houses, ruin the whole street's light. An idea slow and tender as a new leaf unfurled in my mind. What if? I said, it didn't go to a developer. What if it became something else? I bought the lot, not through the trust, but with a portion of my new personal funds. I hired a landscape architect, a young woman with dirt under her nails and fire in her eyes. Together we designed the Eleanor Walsh Community Garden. Raised beds for vegetables, plots local families could rent for a nominal fee, a small grove of fruit trees, and a bench at the center with a plaque, in memory of Eleanor, who knew that real growth takes both sunshine and strong roots. It became my new classroom. I found myself teaching neighbors how to prune tomato plants, how to compost the history of heirloom seeds. The gentle, patient work of helping something grow was a language I remembered how to speak. I also established, through the trust, the Eleanor and Bennie Walsh Future Educators Fund. It provided annual scholarships for students pursuing a degree in history or social studies education. The first award letters went out. Reading the essays from those idealistic young people, their passion for making the past matter, filled a chamber of my heart I thought had closed forever. The grief for Eleanor was still there. It would always be there. But it was no longer a void. It had become a fertile soil, and the wound from Julian, it had calloused over. I felt no hatred, just a profound, enduring sadness for the man he chose to become, and a deeper, more aching love for the woman who had tried so hard to prevent it. Healing didn't come in a moment. It came in the daily choosing to get out of bed and brew 1 cup of coffee, not 2. Choosing to answer when Lisa called. Choosing to sit with Mr. Miller and lose another game of chess. Choosing to get my hands dirty in the garden, feeling the sun on my neck, and knowing in some small way I was continuing a conversation Eleanor and I had started long ago about what it means to nurture something. The fortress, as she called our home, was no longer just a place to be defended. It had doors I could open. To friends, to community, to purpose. The $48 million, that staggering number, had receded into the background. It was a tool, not a trophy. It allowed me the freedom to dig in the earth to fund a young teacher's dream, to live without fear of a precarious old age. But it did not define me. What defined me was the choice I made in Patrick's office, the choice to stand on the ground my wife had given me. The lesson I learned is this. Legacy is not a vault to be guarded. It is a story that continues. Eleanor's legacy wasn't the portfolio. It was the love that built it, the intelligence that structured it, and the fierce protection she wired into its very core to shield the gentle heart she loved. She didn't give me money. She gave me back my own agency, wrapped in a legal document. She gave me the means to say no, with absolute finality. And in doing so, she taught me that the strongest walls are not made to keep people out, but to give you the safety to let the right people in. And Julian, I think of him less and less. But when I do, I feel a pang for the boy who loved his mother's laugh. I harbor no anger now. Resentment is a poison you mix for someone else and then drink yourself. I chose to pour it out. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is to let someone face the full, unsoftened consequence of their choices. It is the only way they might ever change. I had to love him enough to let him go, and to love myself enough to make sure he couldn't come back and break what was left. So here I am, Bennie, 67 years old, a widower, a gardener, a sometime teacher, a trustee. The quiet in my heart is no longer emptiness. It is peace. It is hard-won and precious. Eleanor was right all along. That is the unshakable power, and no one can ever lock you out of it. Now I am curious about your stories. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to find a strength you didn't know you had, perhaps to protect something sacred? Or have you ever received a gift of trust that changed everything for you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own fortresses and freedoms, please give it a like. That lets me know these shared experiences matter. And if you would like to join me for more journeys like this, please hit that subscribe button. It truly helps this channel grow and reach others who might need to hear a story of quiet strength. Finally, if you know someone who might be facing their own difficult crossroads, feel free to share this with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step toward finding your own ground. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. However your day is going, wherever you are listening from, I wish you peace. I wish you a quiet heart, and I wish you the unwavering knowledge of your own unshakable ground. Take care.